find that I always leave something open, and I'm like, what am I doing? Okay. Good.
I lost you.
Got so excited, I closed it
Yeah,
down.
I was like, everything's good except now we lost you. All right. Just before we get started, yes, the recording is in progress. Okay, so we're good. I did a mistake once. I had someone at the very beginning from China, and I forgot to press record, and I was mortified.
That would be bad.
That would be very bad. Just before we get started, I know that Olivia probably shared the questions with you. Overall, are you okay with the questions?
Yeah, I have to admit, I only skimmed them. There was a lot.
There's a lot, eh?
And my only concern was just that, I mean, some things I don't know that people care about. So if it seems boring, skip it. My goal is always to try to educate people who wouldn't necessarily know what's going on. It's about getting people to either take an action or change their ways, or so. Yeah, but I mean, go to. But
as I told Olivia, it's not live, so that's the beauty of it. I can always edit whatever we feel is,
sorry,
not necessary out.
Yeah, exactly.
And do we have a good hour with you
today?
today?
I have to pick up my son at school in 3 hours, but hopefully.
Okay. I don't know if you got to see the link, because it's a video-based podcast, which is a bit different from your typical podcast, and it's on YouTube. And at the beginning, I thought, am I going to have enough material to discuss, an hour long? And it happens to be that most guests go beyond an hour, but, I want to be respectful of your time. So I would say an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay. Sure. I mean, I do find these things go quick as well. There's lots to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We'll see how it goes. And if you have to cut it short, just let me know, and it's no problem. All right. So I guess we'll start with the introduction. And then I'll go through the questions. And if you need to interrupt for whatever reason, you can let me know.
Sure.
Okay. So with me today is Jason Baker, PETA Asia's Senior Vice President of International Campaigns, who generously offered to share his insight and knowledge as to the multitude of issues plaguing animals across the Asia Pacific. Our talk today will focus primarily on PETA Asia's in-depth investigations into the very cruel dog leather industry. PETA Asia is an affiliate of American animal rights organization PETA, based in Virginia and led by Ingrid Newkirk, its international president. They work through public education, cruelty investigations, research, animal rescue, legislation, special events, celebrity involvement, and protest campaigns. Located in Hong Kong, PETA Asia is the base for animal rights campaigns across Asia, a region that is home to more than 1/3 of the world's population. PETA Asia may be young, but it has already created quite a stir with attention-grabbing ads and groundbreaking protests in countries like Malaysia, Thailand, and Japan, where public demonstrations are rare. PETA Asia has already won victories big and small for animals, from shutting down a roadside zoo in Vietnam to distributing more than 35,000 vegetarian starter kits in the Philippines. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Jason.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so happy to have you on the show. As I expressed, I've been wanting to have PETA Asia on the podcast for a very long time. So this is great. I'm very grateful for your time today. I do feel like PETA Asia, it's fairly young, but I think it's important because, you're operating in countries with little to animal welfare laws. And I believe that we can all benefit, obviously, from your insight and knowledge. But before we go into the gist of our conversation, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit more about you, how you got involved with animal rights, and particularly
Sure.
with PETA.
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself the first of the PETA generation. And by that, I mean, and I'm not young, but when I was in high school, there was PETA. And when I started working at PETA, I started as an intern, and I encourage everyone. I think the best thing if you want to get into animal rights, the best thing to do is to intern with an animal rights organization. PETA Asia is going to be restarting our intern program at the end of the year. It's out of the Philippines. So I was an intern. Most of my staff were interns. You learn a lot. Anyways, I started as an intern, and after I got a job, I found that everyone older than me didn't have PETA in high school, and everyone younger than me did. So I got it. So anyways, so I left. I went from university to PETA. Started in the mailroom, full time, part-time in the mailroom actually, then full-time in the mailroom. Then I did campaigns, and I worked in the audiovisual department. I worked in the media department.
Wow. And we're talking about PETA in the US, obviously.
In the US, we're talking about in the US.
Yeah.
And then back in 1998, there was a lot of firsts. I mean, we were young. PETA was young then in the US, and so there was a lot of firsts that you could do. I was the first staffer to have a laptop, the first one to have their own cell phone, the first one. I was the first one to go on tours, meaning I would like take someone and pack up a car and drive around doing demos for a month. One point I went off on the road for 3 months. I developed the cage demo, which is pretty popular now, but basically made some cages that were collapsible, put people in them, and the press loved them.
Yeah.
And so I sort of developed that and took that all over North America for a couple of years.
You're the one behind that, because I actually was someone in a cage in one of our local protests.
So for me, I love demos. I love the visuals. I love getting people to think. Yeah. I think most protests are boring and they're forgotten about. And you don't need 100 people when one or 4 or 5 people could make something striking that makes people think about it. And a lot of PETA's attention in the US has been for sexy naked ads, which are fine, but they don't actually pull at the heartstrings. I get how they get the attention.
They're more like shock value,
And they get us in the door to discuss serious issues, and I fully support that. But what I loved about the cage protests and the cage demos is that they actually pull at heartstrings and get us in the door to talk. Yeah. So we would be in front of Macy's in Manhattan, and people would the first time we did it, I remember, and people were just shocked. We had people in fur coats in cages, and so, anyways, that was a long time ago. But that's sort of where I got the start. And then back in 1998, I was asked to go open PETA India. So in 1999, I showed up in India, opened PETA India. They canceled my visa because we were so impactful on the leather industry. I think they said in the first year that we were there, we cost the leather industry $68 million US.
Oh my God! Wow.
And so we were pretty good. And I love PETA India. Anyway, so after a couple of years, they figured out how I was extending my visa, and they finally put a stop to it, and I got kicked out. But at that point, PETA India was already going. I think that if they hadn't kicked me out, I probably never would have left, because
there's so much work to do.
So much work, and it was so interesting and so new and frankly so fun. And so
there's no more PETA India?
No, there is. PETA India was big enough at that point where they couldn't stop it just by kicking me out.
Yeah.
And so, I love PETA India so much. I think going there was such the right time, and we are so influential, and it was so needed. I can't say enough great things about PETA India. So anyways, I was then stuck sort of like, I kept thinking, I'll get back. And at some point, Ingrid Newkirk finally said, I don't think you're getting back. And so I had spent some time in Hong Kong, and I think probably it was the best way to leave, because I had learned a little bit about Hong Kong and about celebrities and done
right.
I protested previously in 98, I had done a cage demo in Hong Kong. So I saw how the press loved it and the need for it. And I'd always wanted to open PETA Asia, but I think in hindsight, if I hadn't kicked me out, I never would have been forced.
Right.
So,
Kind of pushed you to do that.
Yeah.
But can I ask you, how long were you in India? Like, how long did your stay?
3 years.
3 years. And
at the time it seemed like 10, but it was a difficult time. I had traveled a lot. I had been to Africa and I'd been to Europe a lot, and I thought I knew everything. And I was 28 at the time, I guess, and I really no problem. And I was shocked. And so India has come a long way in that time. A long way.
And when you mentioned the leather trade, because I'm a little bit surprised, I'm not that well versed in India, but I mean, I know the cow is sacred, so I guess they were using other types of animals, or
no, it's cows. They're sacred unless you can make some money.
Yeah, no, there you go. That's the extent of their tradition.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. There's lots. It's a huge, thriving illegal industry. It's legal to kill cows in West Bengal and Kerala, which are states on either end of the country. So they basically illegally transport them there. And it's. I think I can't remember now. Or where it is now, but it's the second, I think, biggest leather producer in the world. It's rough because the way they transport them, instead of having local slaughterhouses, which we don't want any slaughterhouses, but instead of slaughtering them locally, they march them like just these hell trips across the country. When they fall down from exhaustion or dehydration, they rub chilies into their eyes or break their tails to get them to move.
Oh my God.
And
wow.
Yeah. Stuff. And then there's the whole chemical industry that is used to treat the leather, and how it takes advantage of the poor and the young and the children. It's just anyway.
It gives way to human rights issues as well.
I was in Bangladesh too for a leather investigation there, and it's just as bad. I mean, I was at a spot once, and the water it started to rain. Little drops are raining. Well, I could see it on the water, on the river, and and the guy next to me goes, it's not raining. And I said, what do you mean? I can see it. And he's like, that's the chemicals leaching up from all the toxins from
my God,
the tanneries in the area.
Chemical rain.
Yeah, it was just chemical bubbles. They were little bubbles coming up.
Oh my God.
Chemicals from all the tanneries in the area. And I was just like, wow.
That must give way to a lot of health problems in the area.
It does, and they have huge cancer numbers in those areas, but they're poor, so nothing gets done about it. Yeah. So the leather industry is quite fascinating to me because leather is so cheap, but there are so many people who paid the price for it. Yeah. For cheap leather in the West, the animals, children, people's health.
Yeah. And they're not even aware of all that goes on, behind.
The cruelty is
unspeakable.
So anyway, so I ended up in Hong Kong, and to make a long story longer, I ended up in Hong Kong and just started going from there. Never knew where it was going to go, and then over time. The goal of PETA Asia isn't to do what others are doing, it's to do what's not being done. It's sort of PETA's goal everywhere. I mean, we always talk about, if we can get someone else to do it, go for it. We are not proud. We are just trying to get, because there's so much to do and there's so few of us.
Yes.
So it was just about sort of, I think when I first started it, we also included Australia in the beginning, and that's separate now too. But I think the first thing that we found in that time was that just that getting the facts and the information wasn't there. Yeah. So anyone talking about statistics was really pulling stuff from the West. So a lot of what we tried to do were investigations, everything from the fur industry. There's a lot. We've done a lot of investigations over the year: badger hair and down, Angora, and they were pretty monumental investigations where no one had been into an Angora farm before and seen how they just literally by the fistful rip the
Oh,
hair
I
out of it.
know. I
And then,
saw I
and then
saw PETA footage of Down, you know, like
yeah, yeah,
a woman
same
pulling
thing.
feathers off. Yeah,
Yeah. So with the
horrible.
Angora one, these rabbits just scream. And then when we took our footage to businesses around the world, I mean, now it's really hard to find Angora. Everyone got rid of it. And the government tried to claim that this is not common practice. But then we showed them on their own government website
Oh,
their how to pull the hair out of rabbits.
oh yeah, right.
And took it
Okay.
down, but it was too late. We'd already shown them.
You've been exposed.
Yeah, so it was like you can't say it's not common practice when there's an SOP, how to do
Yeah.
it on your website.
Yes.
Uh, so
Wow.
so bringing us up, that was I guess it's sort of been a while that PETA Asia's been around. We now have an office in the Philippines. We
And what year was your first office? I think it was in Hong Kong.
Yeah, 2004. I sort of 2004, but there's like dates that we started things and dates where things were registered and dates when things
Yeah, exactly.
and they so sometime around in the middle of October, I think, of 2004 was our
Wow.
official.
Because when it said PETA is young, PETA Asia is young, I was like, oh, maybe it's 2010, but
I
that's
think we're
actually
young compared to the
compared to the actual PETA in the
everybody
United
else.
States. Yeah.
Everybody else be young, but
And so I guess if I can ask you, okay, so now 2004 approximately is when PETA Asia was established. And I'm a little bit curious, like the kind of work you were assigned to, like, was it always coming from the US PETA division saying, okay, we need you to do this, or were you given free reign as to?
No, I would, Ingrid is a fantastic person to work with. She gets a lot of criticism because she runs animal rights like a business, and that's the way it should be. We're not here to just have fun and to hold people's hands.
Be everyone's friend, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's serious stuff to get done, and if you can't pull your weight, we're sorry, but that's you're not going to last. And
right.
And so, but as a result, you are surrounded by really competent, interesting people who, I mean, I sit there and I'm just always blown away by my coworkers.
Yeah.
It's great. But what that does is it puts you in an environment where you're challenged, and then Ingrid just has confidence in you.
Yeah.
Ingrid knows that you've been around, you've been tested, and you make the right decisions. When I went to India, I had already been to PETA for 4 years. I had been to every state, protested in every state in the US at that point. So India was one learning challenge. Ingrid grew up in India, so she could always question me, and we would debate, and when
she gave you a lot of latitude,
well, but yeah, and then when it moved to Asia, she doesn't know Asia as well. It's not that she doesn't, but it's also not that she doesn't know Asia. It's just that she also knows that I do. And so, so honestly, I mean, I just feel like we talk a lot almost every day. But at the same time, she's not tapping her finger on the day-to-day.
Right. She's not micromanaging you, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think micromanaging is good when you need it. And I'd love to chat with her on the phone all the time. Fun and interesting, and she has great ideas. She's just busy. So, and like today, I updated her on a couple of investigations and when they're coming out, and there we are. But she knows that I know celebs better than her, and I know cities and media and campaigns better than her. Not that she's not fantastic. She's just,
she delegates where delegation is needed, and you're obviously there on the ground, so you're in the better position. But can I ask you, was it your first time, like, you're the one who volunteered to go to India, or had you ever
volunteer? Didn't volunteer. Let's be clear. I mean, so I had been the one who always traveled. I even went to a college I went to a college where your junior year you do an overseas study, and they had lots of
Trip, right.
yeah, and so it was part of the curriculum was foreign students coming in and you going out. So it was very much
Okay.
in my um, and so because of that, I think it just looked around and was like, who can do India? Who likes to travel? At the time, it wasn't people who like to travel. It's more like who likes to camp, because it was a difficult 1999 in India was difficult. Since I was 28, I wanted to go to clubs and I wanted to go to coffee shops, and
Yeah.
those really weren't the thing that were happening then.
No.
Remember at one point we did one of my first photo shoots with this legendary Bollywood star now, John Abraham. We did the shoot in Delhi. We had the top photographer. We had the guy who designs for Miss India. And they were like, well, we're going to go out afterwards. And I was like, I am going out with like one of the hottest team
Yeah.
around, and we're going to just hit the town. And it was like, and we went to what they said was the hottest place around, and we went to TGI Fridays.
Oh my
It was
God.
like, wait,
A little bit
wait,
disappointing.
so like, but things close at 10 in Delhi. And
This is where it's at, man.
yeah, so but anyways, it was a different, I mean, Ingrid and I talk a lot, I've talked about it. It was a difficult year for me there. I thought I knew things. I was young. They didn't have Skype, so I couldn't talk to my family. Things were more difficult, more alone. But I had someone who came from the US who helped me out and sort of got me through it. And then just success helps you, and you get used to it or numb to it or whatever it was. But I really didn't want to leave, and I still love it, and I think I miss it. I love this other stuff we're doing, but so India was not my idea. I wish I could say I was begging for it. PETA Asia, I really fought for. I think at the time we have to look at economics and where we're going, and so Ingrid had suggested maybe I should go to the UK. And just after being in India, the adventure was so amazing that I was looking at what else, and I had always wanted to do Hong Kong. So I think Ingrid's way is to have you sort of really want something.
Follow your passion. You have to be passionate.
So there we were.
Well, I have tons of questions. I know, we don't have all the time in the world, but just like quickly, I'm a little bit curious. Do you have any family ties to Asia? Are you? No,
I don't have anything. And I mean, I've learned a lot. And I think part of the privilege that I got being young was I got the ability to make mistakes. Learn how I went, create things. Back before email was so popular and used in media, you would fax your news release. And I developed this thing where when we did ads, we would print them out and mail them to the newspapers. And we had such huge pickup from it. Because nobody did that. Nobody put a nice glossy photo, and we would send 200 of them out. So we just made things up as we went.
You were creative and going with it. And what made you, because I'm assuming you were young when you were an intern at PETA in the mailroom, and you were already a vegan.
22. Right. So
what made you become vegan quickly? Because I know we have a lot of stuff to cover.
I went vegan after reading Diet for a New America, John Robbins' book. It's sort of, we talk a lot about what makes people go vegan now. And I didn't have the internet. And when I wanted to see videos, I would send a self-addressed envelope to PETA, and they would send me a video, and I had to send it back on VHS. So I struggle, because to me, it's always about books. It's always about in-depth things that make you really grasp it. And but I get now, it's videos. And so but it was a book for me. It was just, that was it. And I went vegan after in 92, I guess.
Wow. Well, I can relate to that, because I became vegan at age 15, and that was over 3 decades ago. And there was no internet. And it was kind of a fluke, because I have to give praise to my friend at the time, my best friend. Her sister was a member of PETA. And if it wasn't for her actually telling us to watch a VHS tape at the time of PETA that she had received, because she was a member, she would get newsletters through the mail. And we said, okay, we'll watch it. And I couldn't watch more than 5 minutes of it. It was slaughterhouse footage of cows. And I was 15, and it shocked me to the core. And I immediately, it was like visceral reaction. I said, oh my God, I never want to contribute. Like, this was horrific. So I went, vegan overnight. I was like, okay, throw out all my leather goods, which, looking back, I should have given them to Goodwill. But, back then you're so dramatic, like a teenager like that. And so I can totally relate. There was no internet. And I speak to, local activists here, and they're young, and, sometimes they complain. I'm like, listen, you got it so good. You got it so good.
No, I mean, it used to be that people don't get that. When you were in a city, you would look around and go into Starbucks to ask them if they had soy milk, not because you wanted it, because you were trying to campaign for them to get it.
Oh, yeah. The early campaign.
Here's soy milk. No, okay. You'd walk out, and like, if they did, you just walk out anyways. You're like, okay, thanks. You didn't actually want a coffee.
Yeah.
Like, people get how easy, like, soy milk was, was
the only plant-based milk.
Right, but it was like at a health food store, and there were 3 kinds.
Yeah, I know. I was like, there was no such thing as oat milk, no almond milk. It was scale in my coffee. It was terrible. But
people don't get how easy it is now. I know it's
and to be the odd man
an old
out.
Man saying that now, but it's really, and part of that is that's what helps. What I try to bring to the staff and the activists that we deal with is, I'm old enough and been in the movement long enough that I can actually see the change.
Yes.
I see how Hong Kong has more vegan options. I see how Shanghai has more vegan options.
Yes.
I see how more people care about animals. The first protest I did in Hong Kong in '98, I managed to find one guy who would help me, but everybody else who was around would only just go be down the block and watch. And Hong Kong at the time, and even somewhat today, is not as much today, but Hong Kong at the time was very open to protests, but people were just too scared to do that. And the last protest I did a couple of years ago in Hong Kong, a few months before the pandemic, I think we had like 20 people. And so it just showed you that, like, this development, that there are people protesting for animal rights all the time now in Hong Kong, when it just wasn't happening in the beginning. And the same with Malaysia, and the same with there were no protests happening. I mean, it's somewhat more of a common thing now. And that's so what I try to get across to the activists and locals, is that you can see the change.
Yeah,
because that's the hardest part.
Because often people don't see it when they're too much into it, or like they've been doing it only recently. But you have a greater perspective. Yeah.
I'm hoping that keeps people from burning out, being able to know that change does come slowly. And there are certain people who like victories in certain ways. I like the whole idea of education. And a lot of what PETA does is we have social media in Japanese, traditional Chinese, simplified Chinese, Vietnamese, our English one, and we will soon have Thai and Arabic. And to me, it's about getting that information out there and just educating and educating. And some people get more excited about actual quick victories, like saving physical animals, which is great. But to me, like I'm playing the long game.
Yes.
We're trying to teach the younger generation.
I have to agree with you there, because the podcast was originally started just to cover the dog cat meat trade, because it's a big problem, all across Southeast Asia. And we can save as many dogs as we want, but at the end of the day, it's not going to change anything. It's just going to perpetuate, so we need laws in place to curb this dog meat, and whether it's dog or cat meat or dog leather. I mean, saving an animal is great, but it's like not a solution.
Change the demand. Doesn't change the demand. And so in talking about that, I mean, I think people might be interested to know that I actually stayed away from the dog meat issue for a very long time. And on some levels we still do. And I found that it was important when we did our first investigation, which the horrific level that this investigator went through of just videotaping dog after dog being clubbed and skinned, and it was other dogs watching, and it was extremely bloody. The dog had a collar on them. But what was important to me was not to just show cruelty for cruelty's sake, because the reality is that most people, even in China, don't eat dogs, and certainly outside of of China, they don't eat dogs. And so I didn't want people to just hate China.
Right.
I wanted to give them something that they could do, and so I found that bringing the leather industry into it and showing that no one had ever done that before. No one had ever
Yeah.
gone a step further and traced the leather, and then we find that they're exporting it. You know, we saw gloves going to South Korea, and once you start exporting it, it can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, what needed to be done is people need to realize that those gloves or that belt that they're getting could be dog, because once a skin is tanned, the skin is tanned. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to tell where they're from.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that was the gist
Well,
of
I would like to, go a little bit further into that, because that was one of my questions, is that a lot of nonprofits, especially foreign NGOs, have focused on the dog cat meat trade. It is a big issue. It is, even though you say only maybe 10% of the Chinese population eat dog meat on a regular basis, it still gives way to huge numbers, obviously, because of their population size. And it's not just China, it's all over Southeast Asia. It's South Korea, it's Cambodia, it's Indonesia, which is particularly cruel. It's, all over India, and it's a big issue. It gives way to human rabies. It gives way to social unrest. It's a big problem. Stolen pets, a lot of these dogs are stolen pets. They're sold into the trade by their owners. So there's a lot of issues surrounding the dog cat meat trade. And I was just curious, like, why PETA never chose to focus on that, but you've kind of told me a little bit.
But
there's
more to it, actually. I mean, there's two aspects to me. One is that others are doing it. And so when we have that philosophy, if others are doing it, don't do it.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. But the other is more strategic. And I actually believe that foreign groups campaigning on the issue are counterproductive. I think that the reason Yulin can't end is because the Chinese government cannot be seen as bowing to foreign pressure. And that culture trumps cruelty when it comes to most people. And the perfect example of that is I had campaigned for a dog law in South Korea. And this was just a basic dog law. It didn't end dog meat, but it would have been the first dog law. And we had dog killing footage from South Korea at the time. And I wanted to get some copies made, and someone sent me to a TV station to make copies of the video to give out. And the TV station said they couldn't copy it, nor could they run it, because they were South Koreans first. And what that meant was it's more about being South Korean and not anti-South Korea, and
they saw it as an insult to their culture.
Foreign versus, and so I think that is the gist of it. I think that you support the locals in China to do what they can, and they can chip away at it and they can work at it. But I just believe, and maybe with COVID things will change in Yulin, but there's lots of dog meat across China. Yulin is not just it; it's a symbol.
No, it's a flagship event,
right? Right. Yeah. But the problem with that is that symbol is then pulled up to the government as well. And I do think the government doesn't like it. I think they would, especially on the national level. They don't want to promote that as being what the country is seen as, but they don't have an ability to end it because they can't. They really just can't be seen as bowing to foreign pressure. And it's not talked about.
But is it fair for foreigners to just sit back and say, "Oh, we can't get involved"?
Well, we have to be strategic. I think you have to. I think we encourage the locals to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's where it is, and you pick the battles that you can win.
Yeah.
But if by making it's a difficult issue. And it's why you don't see us doing it. Don't get me wrong. Our fundraising department would love us to do more on it because it makes money. But it's not where
You should focus your
It's not
energies.
where it's not where I think it's just not where I think we
Can make the
have
most
this
change.
impact. Make
Yeah.
a big impact. And there are great people in China. There are so many great
Oh,
actors
yes. Yeah.
doing so many good things, and uh, I mean, I see how things are changing. I see how when you walk down the street in parts of Shanghai and Beijing, more people are walking their dogs than you would see walking them in Toronto
Yeah.
or New York City.
Yeah.
So there is a
A
huge
shift. I mean, there is a growing pet
remember-
industry. Yeah.
I remember when we started, people asked us if doing a spay neuter ad was anti-government in China, and I was like, not at all. And these days now, there's some pullback on celebrities doing things because the government has clamped down just on celebrities in general in China. But
Okay.
celebrities trip themselves now. I mean, doing a spay neuter ad or an adoption ad for dogs in China, there's tons of them being done. There's loads
Okay.
of celebrities who have done them where it was just 20 years ago, it was a completely foreign idea that it would be done. So I see the attitudes changing, and I get that part of it is that having a companion cat or a dog is seen as somewhat westernized and wealthy and hip. I get it, and there's a whole problem, and we've done an investigation into puppy mills, which they're breeding dogs, for pets.
Yeah.
And that's also bad. So it's not.
Oh, it's terrible. It's absolutely
yeah.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
so with one comes the other.
yeah, it's
just keep educating.
Absolutely. And I guess PETA's position, I mean, you've been PETA US, I mean, the parent company, the parent nonprofit has been advocating for all animal rights. And so to position yourself strictly, against dogs and cats is another thing too. And I understand that. And so I guess, your work in Asia, what countries are you more focused on? Is it mainly China? And what are the prevailing animal rights issues in Southeast Asia? What would you say?
We focus on where we think we can have the biggest impact, and that does sometimes shift.
Yeah.
It has shifted over time. It depends. So we have an office in the Philippines where we do a lot of rescue work, spay and neuter. Last year, we adopted out more animals than any shelter in the country.
Wow.
We don't have we just have a foster program.
Wow.
So it's a lot of work. And that's where we have our intern program. I find that the biggest things that we have going in Asia are our investigations and our education through social media.
Investigations and what?
Education.
Education, yeah.
So mainly through social media.
Okay.
I find it to be the last few weeks, our Facebook in Vietnam has reached about an average of about 2 million people a week.
Oh, wow.
So there is such a hunger and a need to fill that void, and no one's doing it. So we are. Our new Japanese TikTok is, we had 2 days ago, one of our videos, and this is pretty regular, but we just started a few months ago. One of our videos about pigs had 100,000 views.
Wow.
All in Japanese.
Wow.
So we are filling voids and trying to educate on veganism, educate about animal. We're targeting a company, Ajinomoto in Tokyo, who produces MSG, but a whole bunch of other products, and they test on animals. And we've been focused in Taiwan on getting a whole bunch of food companies. People would be shocked at all of the juice, and we even found a soy milk company who was testing on animals. So that's really sort of to us the current focus. A lot of the focus on vivisection has been on these food product companies paying for animal tests.
Oh my God.
Stuff. And we've been really successful the last year to 18 months on getting a lot of major ones to stop. And even the Taiwanese government has made some changes to their requirements. So big deals there, vivisection. And then you go through our investigations, and 2 years ago, And we have a strong campaign going where we documented monkeys being used to pick coconuts.
Yes, I heard about that. Yeah.
Really just a terrible industry, just terrible. And there are so many coconut milk brands in Thailand that are linked, and they're not doing enough about it. And so the campaign continues. They take monkeys from the wild, they leave them on.
It's horrible.
And
it's
they
horrible.
get old enough, they just throw them back into the wild. And
they're enslaved, exploited. I mean, actually, a friend of mine told me about this coconut, video that she had seen, and I stopped because coconut is something that we can eat as vegans, right? And I just stopped. I stopped buying coconut milk.
Well, everyone should know it's only in Thailand that this really happens. There's a little teeny weeny bit of it, maybe in Malaysia, maybe a little bit in Vietnam, but it's not on any real numbers. So it's just Thailand you need to worry about. And coconut water, they use different coconuts, and so they're smaller. They're easier to pick. But it's just coconut milk from Thailand.
Okay, I can have my coconut water and feel okay.
You can have coconut water, and so places like most coconut milk comes from Indonesia.
Oh, yes.
So Thailand is, I think, actually the 7th biggest producer of coconut products. The canned coconut milk with the coconut, those are often from Thailand. But other than that, if you're buying like a Tetra Pak of coconut milk, it's probably not from Thailand. The bulk
often like it comes from China or
from China. It actually comes Indonesia, then the Philippines are the top 2, and then Brazil.
Okay.
So it's easy. It's not as hard to find.
Okay.
I would think just stay away from Thailand.
Yeah,
I can tell you that 53 ones, but it's hard. It's really hard. So anyways, that's one of our investigations. We've documented cruelty at the pyramids with horses, and we're working to try to get horses out of the pyramid park entirely. We're also trying to get the donkeys.
And where is that? Exactly?
Egypt. The pyramids in Egypt.
Oh, in Egypt. Okay, the pyramids. Okay. What is the situation there with horses? They use them to drive tourists around, and they slip and fall all the time. They don't get any water during the time. And so we documented horses that would fall down from exhaustion, and then they would just whip them until they got back up. Oh.
And they don't need to be there. They just don't need to be there.
No.
We can have motorized vehicles and electric cars.
It's like the horse carriage industries, like we've been trying so hard to ban them. Finally, Montreal decided to do away with it, but it's been years, of fighting. It was only recently. And so
they're supposed to ban the horses from the new pyramid setup that they're going to have, but it hasn't happened yet, and they are sort of walking it back. So the pressure is still on them to change. Wow. And then you have PETA, where they have these steps that go up to the monastery at the end of this 6-kilometer walk, and there's 950 steps up to the top, and there's not a lot, but some people will take donkeys up. It's destroying the steps, and it's terrible for the donkeys.
Yeah.
We have a free veterinary clinic that's open every day outside the park, staffed with veterinarians. That's the only place you can get free veterinary care for animals in the area.
Wow.
And we see cruelty every day. We have about 30 animals getting treated for abuse, and we can find everything from animals being lit on fire to being pushed off cliffs to being slashed with a knife to just general poor care where they come in really sick or they've been eating trash.
Oh, God.
Into their stomach.
There's no end to these problems and issues, but I'm curious.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot of what we do are investigations. They're just, and I would encourage people to go to PETA.com or go to our YouTube page.
Oh, you have a YouTube page. Okay, I'm definitely going to link that up.
There's a lot of videos. Our investigations are there, and we just had some.
And so your educational programs are mostly run on the social media platforms?
Yeah, it's about how we reach the most people the easiest way. We just had a video, some videos of some investigations that came out from Japan. The first time people have been in the egg industry in Japan, and showed how chickens suffer, and it's just like you would see in the West, but nobody had actually been to Japan. And what we find in most countries that people like to say, oh, well, that happens over there. It doesn't happen here, because that's everyone. That's every country. Oh, why are you picking on us? Doesn't happen here. It happens over there. Like,
It happens everywhere,
it
right?
does. And
Yeah.
I remember when I was in India, someone told me that they were going to start intensively farming cows. And I was like, the guy had no idea who I was. And he was explaining to me that instead of letting the cows walk around, they're just going to put them all together. And they're just going to keep them in this pen because then they don't burn as many calories and they don't. And I was just like, oh, wow, you're bringing intensive farming to India. Congratulations.
Yeah. Where's your location? I'm going to come and check it out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So bringing these investigations, pig investigation we did, and horse racing we exposed in South Korea, and then everything from a whole bunch of investigations in China.
And like there's a lot of greyhound racing as well, and China. I know, like it was pretty bad.
Hong Kong, Macau, and they shipped them from Australia.
I think that one of the main parks closed down a few years back. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there has been, but it's still a thriving industry, unfortunately. It's about
underground. Yeah.
So we're not at a loss. We just finished an investigation of Louis Vuitton and Gucci slaughterhouses in Indonesia. The first time that we had been into confirmed Gucci and Louis Vuitton slaughterhouses, where we found snakes who had their mouths tied shut and they were pumped full of water. Really cruel ways to die.
For their skin, right?
For their skin. Yeah. Make handbags and wallets and whatever.
Oh my God.
We just finished an investigation documenting cows that come from Australia, the live export industry into Indonesia, where they're then supposed to have humane standards, and there is no humane standards. So we document for the government yet again that they're just slashed with dull knives and they writhe on the floor and can take 6-7 minutes to die. I think one of the cows we saw took 13 minutes. So, and they didn't know how to stun them. They're beating them over. They're stabbing them to try to get them to stand up so they can stun them for a second time.
I think it's a lot of that, eh? It's not necessarily that they're, deliberately cruel, is that they don't know what they're doing. And, like they have rudimentary methods.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But what the slaughterhouses we were in were supposed to have been Australian government sanctioned and standards lifted up to Australian standards, and simply not the case.
Not the case. It's just another way to make money, right? So
yeah.
And what would you say are like overall, like, is there an overarching like animal rights issues in Asia, or it's really multifold? It's like every type of animal is being exploited. There's nothing that stands out from the fold. Or
there is, and on some levels, it's Asia is just not one thing, and that's one of our most difficult problems, is that it's not only is it multiple languages, they are very distinctive cultures, and they can be very different. There's some similarities, but Singapore is massively vegan friendly. There's veganism, there's veganism everywhere, and so you have a sort of different way of campaigning and educating there than you do in, say, Vietnam, or and even in Japan. Like Japan, they're so timid, and the government is so conservative on things that we can't even get a billboard up naming the company.
Oh wow!
Like what? Like they're doing it. They don't deny that they're testing on animals. We're just trying to tell the public that they do.
Yeah.
So
difficult.
So it's always about veganism. It's always about animal testing. Animals and entertainment is different depending on where you are. There's not a lot of it in some countries. Places like the Philippines, they have a bunch of terrible zoos, but there isn't really any circuses or any much animals and entertainment to begin with. So you work strategically, and I also, one of the things that we try to do is to help locals. We will make leaflets. We don't copyright any of the video, the investigations that we do. We don't copyright our footage. We don't copyright things that we make or photos that we take.
You want them to share.
We want them out there. Now, sometimes we buy a we get a photo that isn't ours and we can't give it out for free.
Right.
But anything that we do, we give it out because we want that out there. And so
Yeah.
we will make leaflets for local groups. We'll make videos for local groups to have them do their own thing.
Yeah.
Because there's a balance. And sometimes I get when you're local, you don't want to push the envelope. And so sometimes PETA could go in there and be doing that.
Yeah.
And play good cop, bad cop if need be. And then other times, the locals can just go to town. So, yeah.
Yeah, one of my questions for you is that, you work obviously a little bit everywhere across Asia Pacific, but is there one country that presents greater challenges? Top of mind for me is China, because, it's, grown, it's had a massive economic boom, in the last 50 years, and now it's become the world's second largest economy. Yet, it still has zero animal welfare laws. And that for me is a big problem. It's like, a huge population, like 20% of the world population is in China. And so I know, like, through my podcast, I've interviewed local Chinese, and one of them is the director of an animal hope and wellness China shelter, and she told me that it's been proposed. Animal welfare laws have been proposed for the last 18 years to the National People's Congress Committee, but every year it gets passed on, like, as this is not a priority, and then it's a little bit scary because a lot of people are predicting that China will become the superpower of the world, and I work in finance, and I'm very much aware of, like, how they're really growing at rapid speed, and I think they will. So to have no animal welfare laws in China is, like, have you?
There's two things about that. That part of the reason that there is not going to be an animal welfare law in the near future is that there is one particular person in the People's Congress who is against it and gets it killed every time. So
it's one person.
I don't, maybe more than one, but there's one person that I know of that is the leader of making sure there is no animal welfare law. And so, but really, you just need to move beyond that. And we, even in every country that we're in, we don't look at laws. We don't campaign for laws. We don't. They're great, and it's nice to be able to the first cruelty conviction we got at a shearing shed in Australia was very exciting to know that we could convict for animal cruelty in shearing sheds.
Wow.
But the reality is you don't need laws if you have consumers demanding the change. And most of what PETA does is work with companies to make those changes. And so the government didn't get rid of Angora. It was the companies stopped buying it who changed the Angora industry. And the badger industry now, where they make badger brushes for makeup brushes and shaving brushes, that industry is also dying because the industry decided not to. And the vegan industry in China is booming. Mock meats and mock pork and some amazing things being done.
Wow, yeah.
They're being done not because of the government, but because of consumer demand. And so that's always what we're pushing.
Yeah.
Fur sales are down in China. They've been down year on year in China. Fur sales are about what they were 12 years ago. And given the economic boom of China over the last 12 years, fur sales should have doubled or have tripled.
Yeah, no, considering the household incomes,
aren't wearing fur. And there's a campaign we did, an investigation called Ijao, which is a gelatin made from donkey leather. And it's considered a natural medicine, and it's not. And once our investigation came out, some doctors came out and agreed that it was a terrible thing and that it doesn't help. The government made them take that down, but our investigation got a lot of pickup and a lot of play in China, millions of views, tens of millions of views. And Ijao sales have been down year on year. And so I really believe that it's difficult, don't get me wrong, it is difficult to get the information out in China sometimes. Often.
Oh, yes.
But but when you do, and they do allow for people to actually say what happens, you just can't target companies. And so consumers are changing. They are in China shopping vegan like never before, eating mock meats and eating vegan like never before. The circus industry, actually, our circus investigation actually had government, it had government newspapers confirming what we had found.
Oh,
And that had never happened in the country ever.
wow.
We had professors who, if a professor is quoted, they're held in extremely high esteem in China. Professors agreeing that the circus industry was cruel. And so now you have the government who basically agreed, and now everyone can say that the circus industries are cruel.
Wow.
And those are, so consumers, anyways, I just go back to, yep, it'd be great to have a law. Yes, it would be great to convict on cruelty. And yeah, we hear about it all the time. You can throw a dog out your window. You can drag them behind your, you can do just about anything.
Well, that's it. And that's what disturbs.
But at the same time, but at the same time, we see the economic change. We see how young people aren't eating dog meat or even meat. We see how veganism is the thing. You know, I was at a Stella McCartney launch in Shanghai with her, and you know, vegan clothes was a hip thing, and celebrities were there, and the editor of the editor.
So there's a mind shift, there's an attitude shift.
So you know? I would say, you know, don't you, and that's part of what PETA does. We don't look at what we can't do or what's not happening. We look at what we can, and then try to take advantage of it. And I think, I mean, I'm so optimistic at China. The public and the population, they see things. We have a Facebook is blocked in China, but people know how to get around it. And that's it. You know, we have 70,000 followers on our traditional Chinese page.
Wow.
And so I believe that the Hong Kong and Taiwan are going to help influence in the mainland. I think, and I think people are looking at it, and we know they take our videos and they put it on their own Weibo and WeChat and share them around, and so it's having an influence.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So, you know, that answers my question, because I feel like PETA is really just focusing on curbing the demand for these kind of products, you know, changing mindsets, you know, of the population so that there's less demand. But, you know, you said something important. You're also tackling corporations, because at the end of the day, we can try to change one person at a time, but it's going to take forever. It takes a long time, but maybe with the social media sharing, it reaches a lot of people. I mean, we look at these different things. So it's great when you find companies who are going to get rid of, and I read about them all the time. We have so many people working in our corporate department who literally work to just tweak something that has leather to get it off, and you don't even, it's not even like a big deal. Like, you know, some clothing companies who change the label on so that it's no longer a leather label, and a lot of things like that. So we tweak things, and we get companies to implement or changes, but you sort of need the public to want it, but then you need the companies to have it. And you know, sometimes we say, is it going to fail, or will it come back? I remember McDonald's putting in a veggie burger 25 years ago, and it, you know, didn't do well, and Burger King too then. And now, I mean, yesterday in London, they just had the first all vegan Burger King open up, and that all vegan. Everything's vegan.
Vegan Happy Meal.
Oh, that's amazing.
I was like, where do I book my flight?
Oh my God! Is it only in England, or?
I think it's only going to be only all vegan for a month, maybe.
Okay, they're testing it.
But it's amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
There's like a dozen kind of burgers.
Wow.
You know, there's like chicken burgers, and there's vegan desserts.
Wow.
And it's like, you know, if people, I remember being the only vegan I knew, and now it's like, even now I feel like when I'm say vegan, I feel like I need to explain it, even though everyone knows it now, but I still feel like I need to explain it.
Yeah, we had to explain it for so long.
Yeah. And so how do you now know? When did people start? When did I wake up and everyone started doing it. So yeah. So anyways, I'm not sure what my point was. Just that the change is there.
The change is happening. So that's very encouraging. And,
let me just add, I also just got a photo from one of my staff in the Philippines that Burger King in the Philippines just implemented their second vegan burger, which, this is the Philippines. If you've ever been there, you know it's not like, anyways, it's amazing.
That is progress. That's what I call progress. Well, I just, before we get into the dog leather trade, your investigations, and, I have a bunch of questions on that. I just want to quickly ask your opinion, because the global pandemic, did, cause a lot of uproar socially, on the economic front for sure. And so it had an impact. And I know that's, China has made quite a few changes. There are a lot of positive changes came out of China in particular. The city of Zhuhai, where I think it was Shenzhen first, Zhuhai followed. They banned dog cat meat consumption and production. So that's really good because, someone could kill their dog and that would be perfectly legal. So they banned, 3 big cities in China banned the dog cat meat trade, which was wonderful. And then we have China's Ministry of Agriculture declaring dogs as companion animals and explicitly removing them from the livestock, catalog list. So yeah. I was wondering, because a lot of people, I was on, I'm part of a group on Facebook, and a lot of people were negative. They were like, oh, it means nothing. It's just like a statement to, push us away, us activists that are demanding change. What's your opinion about that decision? And it's not a law, it's more like a directive. So is there any impact coming out of that, statement?
Yeah, I mean, so sort of, I think everyone is right on some levels. There is, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear music or something.
Going over at,
it's your tenant upstairs?
No, helicopter.
Oh, yes. Okay, but now it went away.
It's gone.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think both are right on some level. Every time China says something, it's a big deal. People listen, other governments listen. You can use these quotes, try to move along, because at the end of the day, you can actually prosecute anyone for anything in China because they have some general laws of if you make a fuss, the government can charge you. So yeah. You can, in theory, if anyone hurts a dog, they can say you're making it's called there's a term for it. But anyway, so they can actually charge you with things. So the more the government lays out details on animals, the easier it is for activists locally to point out to things and say, this is the way things should be. At the end of the day, though, it's just an advisory. There's so many asterisks about it that it doesn't matter too much, but it does. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's changing mindsets. It's making things acceptable that weren't acceptable before. Yeah. It's cities are closing down dog meat slaughterhouses and opening dog parks. So this is the change is happening. We see it and we know it. It is not happening as fast as I thought it could or would. I thought 20 years ago we would be in a different world, but it's there. We see that.
I agree with you because I think one of my guests said that basically in China there's no big religion anymore. People don't necessarily get their cues from the Catholic Church, obviously, right. And what they take their cue from is the government. Mm-hmm. So if the government says something, they actually pay attention and it matters. To them, it's like a directive. And so I think it does have an impact on the population, the way they perceive, the dogs, and
it also gives green lights to things like professors. Professors are held in extremely high esteem. So when you get professors now talking about it, sort of academia opens up to more government officials, and it sort of snowballs. So this is all good. where it's going to go, I don't know. I still think the sort of foreign versus West thing is always going to be a hard sell.
Yeah,
The government to come through on.
like
That,
this.
that said, it's happening in South Korea. South Korea is far more westernized, so it's easier for that industry to die out.
Although it's a big industry over there, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it's bigger in China. I mean, in China, it's all over, and you can find it everywhere. So
true. Well, that's great. I think at this point, we're gonna get to the gist of our topic today, which is the dog leather investigation that you've done. And so I'm a little bit curious, when did you officially start these investigations? And was it mostly in China, or like what part of Asia?
I don't know when we officially started it, because our investigations can sometimes take 2 years before we're accumulating the things that we need. We did the badger hair one that I was referring to. We just kept missing it and missing it and missing it. And one of the luxuries we have at PETA is that we can let someone work for a year on trying to nail an industry. And really learning and it's expensive, but when you've gotten it and you've changed that industry, and I think that was part of what happened with dog leather, is we were trying to find. We weren't just trying to document cruelty. That wasn't our goal. Our goal was to show, and so we went into some dog slaughterhouses, and we tried to trace. And in a dog slaughterhouse, I don't need to really explain to people. It's horrific. It's graphic. It's cruel. It's a slaughterhouse. You can't. There's nothing humane or kind about it, and it'll break your heart. And I remember when the first footage came in, and I was just like, wow. Even I was shocked. I had seen other things, but this one was sort of a more intense slaughterhouse.
Wow, usually if it's anything like I've seen,
usually dog meat, they're killed at a dog meat restaurant. It can be out in front or out back. This one was a more intensive. We're gonna kill
one after the other.
We're gonna kill hundreds right now, and our investigator was able to just get tons of footage, and but what we wanted to do was then actually make it so that consumers, so the people who were, we were talking to someone other than who was eating the dog meat. And so that was then following the leather. And we actually ended up giving some of our footage to Reuters, the news agency, who broadcast a story about it, because it was the first time that we went into multiple dog leather processing facilities. One woman who greeted our investigator was wearing a skirt made from dog leather, and there was just stacks and stacks of dog leather pelts, dog pelts that were being tanned, and so we tried to. I think the interesting part of the important part of that investigation was being able to show that it's not just dog fur. Dog fur is also a thing, but there's actually more dog leather. And that leather can be turned into gloves and to be shipped anywhere in the world. And so that is where it affects consumers, and that it can actually hopefully have a global change, because the people eating the dog meat now, I don't have a lot of hope for their ethical standards. And
no.
There's a lot of belief that there is some sort of medical value to it. It's not true. It's hard to fight those beliefs when people really believe in them.
Absolutely.
So it's and that's a lot of times how you can affect an industry is you take the other ways they're making money from it. And you feel the demand there. And when the prices start going down, then people don't want to be in that business. So obviously the demand's not there, prices will go down. But I'm curious, how, first of all, are the people that investigated the dog leather trade, are they part of PETA Asia's team, or are they people that you recruited that are local to obviously China? I'm assuming they have to be local. If they're investigating and entering those facilities, they would have to be, obviously. Yeah,
Not a foreigner.
can't really say. I mean, honestly, it's, for the protection of the people, I can't really give away how we do it, because we have 5 investigators right now,
Okay.
who do amazing work, and some people can talk their way into a vault. I mean,
Oh, they're really good. They're talented.
talented people. And I would say the other thing is that an investigator doesn't fit a stereotype. So anyone can be an investigator. And I always tell people that, and everybody I look at when I meet people, I'm always looking like, could they be an investigator? Could they be? I mean, that's always my number one thing, because it's so important. It's not for everyone. I did a talk in South Korea a few months, 2 years ago now. Sorry, pandemic just keeps messing up my head.
Yes, I know.
So it's been 2 years now. And the questions that came up from it when I was talking about our investigations, the question was all about the mental health of the investigator, and I was just like, what? I was like, aren't you shocked by what they found? And they were all like, oh God, they must have to go to a therapist, and they must have, and so it got me thinking a little bit. Investigators are a type of person, but they're not like a 28-year-old male from wherever, all over.
It can be anyone, I guess,
From different backgrounds. They all have some common, empowered to document what they do. And so, yeah, I think it's hard to find the right people who have the courage, because when you have a camera on you, you feel like it's blinking red. You feel like everyone around you can see it, and that they know what you're doing. And the reality is they don't.
It's very scary. I can imagine. Like I would be like shaking in my boots.
And so our first wool investigation in the sheds in Australia, we had undercover cameras, and we're trying to document. And the cruelty is so immediate. It's the first day they're punching them, they're cutting them, and but the person was in the shed for 2 months, and by the end of it, he would just say to his boss, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna put my GoPro out today," and they'd be like, "Okay." And so it was like we were in this beginning feeling like, oh my God, everyone's gonna like it. So let's worry.
Yeah.
And at the end, like nobody cares. No one even thinks this is a problem.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
So So our first investigation in that one, most of the footage was shot openly.
Oh wow! So they didn't care. So it was not a big deal.
They were just like.
But this was Australia,
and but I mean, a lot of it. I mean, and you find in Asia even more so, they don't care. They're like, yeah, no, there's no problem here. Come on in. I remember showing up at a slaughterhouse, and I'm like, yeah, come on in. We'll give you a tour. Like I was like,
they're almost like proud.
Yeah, it's just so. Yeah, those things are changing. Don't get me wrong. Our impact has made a lot of industries put around memos to say, don't let anyone walk on in.
Well, in terms of the dog leather industry, what are the main producing countries? I mean, I think it's mostly China, but
China. Yeah. The other problem is it's not well regulated, and that was even the problem we had in getting in and being able to trace it. So there is some in Vietnam, and there is some in Thailand, and there is some in South Korea, some in the Philippines. A lot of them, it's very small, but when they're selling them, they're just selling off the tans to make the hides to make extra money, and so they're not. It's hard to follow, but from what we can tell, just because of the order of things and the demand, is that China is the main one.
Okay, and the dogs that are what is the source of these dogs? Like, is there a crossover between the dog meat trade and the dog leather trade? Because they rip off their skin. We've seen it. Do they sell the meat? Like they do, right?
They do. It depends. If the dogs were poisoned, they don't. Even though people will argue that sometimes they still do. But if the dogs were poisoned, they don't. But oftentimes it's a co-product. They get 30 RMB for for the meat and maybe 10 for the pelts or something.
Because correct me
so
if I'm wrong, but for cows, I think the cows that are bred for the leather industry are not the same cows as for the meat. Or
no,
am I?
no,
That's not
that's,
true?
that's not true. Leather is
Ah,
a co-product. So like in India, the meat is all sent. The meat does not make them as much money, but they sell it.
okay. So
So,
it's whatever
and
they
a lot
can
of
do to
yeah,
make money.
and the in India, for example, again, but even in the U.S. too. In the U.S. more so, the cows and the leather are just the two products that they make a lot of money from.
Yeah.
In India, a lot of the meat is shipped off to Malaysia or the Middle East.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely a co-product, and it's why people will tell people it's the meat is maybe being eaten by someone, but when you're buying leather, you are helping keep that slaughterhouse open.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're giving them their money, your money.
Instead of a byproduct, we call it a co-product because it is.
Yeah. And so what, as far as like this is exported anywhere, like in the United States, what are the main countries where this dog leather reaches?
Yeah, I mean, they don't label it as dog, so it's hard. So what we learned was only from what we could learn from the specific place we were in. But they can sell it to somebody down the street who can then sell it as anything they want.
Yeah.
So the export can literally go anywhere. But we were specifically shown a pair of gloves that went to South Korea and Russia at the time.
Okay. Okay.
So it wasn't like, and we found them on a website. So it wasn't like we found those gloves on a website. So it wasn't like it was hard.
No.
And when you get to South Korea, your exports can go anywhere. So and same with China. I mean,
I'm sure it reaches the US, I think there's small.
No
doubt. Yeah. Like articles, like small articles, like belts and, like little trims, because obviously dog leather is not big like a cow. So,
right.
Yeah.
Gloves. The gloves are what we had seen. The skirt that lady was wearing. So anything that size.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have absolutely no doubt it's going in.
Yeah.
Americans want cheap leather.
Yeah.
And they I referred to it earlier. It's when you want cheap, all of the standards go out the window. There's no welfare. There's no environmental standards.
Ethics. Yeah.
And I remember at the time, there was a little kid playing over near they burn. One of the things I learned is that they burn the scraps of the leather and feed it to chickens.
Oh, gosh.
What? There's a little kid there helping his parents pull it together. And I just thought, if people in the West saw this scene, that maybe they would change, because the toxins and the object poverty and the exploitation.
Yeah.
It was hard to take. I wear a t-shirt. I don't have it around. I wear a t-shirt sometimes that has a photo of bricks. It's just a stack of bricks.
Yeah.
But the bricks were on a little area that were gonna go down the river, and they were being sent off from the slaughterhouse, the tannery area. And so I sort of wear that shirt. So then people ask me, is that just bricks? I don't, it's not a pushy statement, but it was like, well, this is, and I explained the situation, way to bring up, it's a polite way to bring up tanneries in Nepal or in Bangladesh, without being graphic about it.
Yeah, that's a good way of, advocating. So in terms of cost, obviously, I'm assuming dog leather trade is it's cheaper to produce than cow. Is there a massive difference?
Yeah, for the most part, dogs are being stolen. We have reports all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of them, I'm sure, are being taken legally. I suspect some are being taken from government shelters knowingly.
Yeah.
The government would claim not knowing. They're stealing them, but dogs are cheap, especially the dogs they're taking. They're not taking golden retrievers. And sometimes I see people who try to suggest that a golden retriever was rescued from the leather industry. That's not happening.
No?
A golden retriever in China is going to be sold like they're a golden retriever in China. They're,
Oh, wow.
you know, designer
For the
dogs.
pet trade? Okay, okay.
Designer dogs sell like designer dogs in China too.
But we do
There's
know that there's a big, a lot of very strict regulations surrounding pet ownership in urban cities.
Yes and no.
You don't believe that? Okay.
Only when it's enforced. And it's not enforced in most areas, and things are changing so much. There are so many places implementing dog parks.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's changing so much, and so many people, so many celebrities now have designer dogs, and
Wow.
they're in such high demand. And we have volunteers who adopt out dogs.
So in Beijing, you can see golden retrievers, and that's
I mean, they have size regulations.
Yeah,
so
they do.
If there are a certain height, there's a problem. But they're not. If a dog is worth $500, they are not selling them to the meat industry.
No.
They're getting their $500, and that's a whole opposite side of the exploitation level.
Yeah.
So it's sad, but for the most part, the dog meat industry are a bunch of unwanted
strays,
older strays,
yeah,
who at the end of a tough life have one last terrible thing to send them off. It's terrible. I mean, I think some of them had good lives and they were stolen, and it's heartbreaking. And you see these dogs who are these aren't dogs who were raised on factory farms for the most part. I mean, some are intensively raised, but very little. Most of them came from some loving home, or maybe not so loving home, but you can pick them up and you can carry them out.
So it's not necessarily from the puppy mill, like breeding facilities.
Most now, if they're going to do a puppy mill, they're going to do dogs that are worth a lot more money.
Yeah, they want more money.
They're not going to raise mutts.
Maybe the rejects.
It's an economics. Yeah.
Okay,
they make a lot of money.
Well, and how long did your undercover investigations last in this dog litter?
I mean, like I was saying, it comes in and out, but I mean, it usually takes like 6 months to put one together. You've got to go in and you make friends, and you just learn. Part of what an investigation does is you learn how the industry works, and you follow again, like I was saying, we didn't know where the leather was going and who was processing it, and that was the trick. And then you sort of have to package it up, see what you have, and get it out to the public. Documenting it does no good if no one knows about it and no one changes. And so that's always, once we finish an investigation, we edit it down, we see what we have, and then we try to place it with some news organization, because telling our members about it doesn't usually change anything, because they already care. So we need to reach people who
are not aware.
And so with the dog meat one, I actually can't remember who ran it, but a lot of times we've placed them in China themselves. When we did our detail investigation, the donkey gelatin, where they kill donkeys with sledgehammers, it didn't do us any good to promote it outside of China, because nobody really eats Yijao outside of China.
No, that's true. That's very true. Yeah.
So our goal was to have some media outlet in mainland to run it.
But the dog leather campaign you ran, like it was also like you had Joaquin Phoenix speak about this, so it did gather a lot of media attention. And would you say, like, did you get any kind of tangible outcome from exposing this, or like it's hard to tell, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think that it's one in a step that you continue to educate with, and note there's rarely just one educational thing that brings the house down. And I think it's just about, we at one point had we were getting 250 million video views a year in mainland China.
Wow.
Chinese videos, 250 million views a year of videos. And so I think that there is a very well-educated group of young people in China who looked at this video and then other videos. And there are, we talk about things that help introduce people to the issues and then get them going.
And it informs their choices. And
so I mean, I don't know what this one did, but it was impactful. It opened up a lot of people's minds. I mean, I have to admit, when we started the investigation, I wasn't sure how much leather was involved in the industry.
Right.
And just like when we did our first shearing shed investigation, I didn't think shearing sheds for wool would be as abusive and graphically cruel as they were. The argument is they clip them, they just shave them, it's easy. But no, like,
that's what most people think.
They cut the hell out of them. They have big gashes. Some of them die. It's bloody.
It's horrific. Yeah.
So with the leather and just the dog leather, it was about learning and then taking that information. And I think a lot of people, I mean, no one talked about dog leather before. Just no one talked about dog leather.
Yeah, and so you were kind of the first to expose it. Yeah.
And we didn't at the time even know if we were going to. We just looked. And sometimes you just have to keep looking. And I think I told you, we learn as we go. And our Angora investigation, Angora rabbits, the first time that we did that, the first few places, it was the bus. We didn't get in and we didn't see, and we were like, oh, there's just some rabbits in cages, and we weren't really sure. And then as we learned, we found more and more graphic cruelty.
Wow. No, I just, off the top of my head, I was thinking maybe some companies, although like for me, an animal's an animal, but some people might take offense at it being a dog, were they like reaching out to say, is there a way we can screen, whether it's dog leather or cow?
Not that I know of. I mean, maybe they were reaching out to our corporate department. But we certainly would have said there is very little way to know.
Yeah, and it's very well concealed.
The best thing to do is to just
not buy leather.
I mean, the reality is, you see, like never before, that companies are doing that. That everyone from H&M to Zara to, there are many corporations out there who are doing some amazing work on alternative.
We're making headway. I mean, for me in Montreal, particularly Canada Goose, we recently won that victory. I mean, it took years. I mean, I say we, I'm a nascent, animal rights activist. I've only been doing it since 2018, but, we have a strong community of activists, and they've been at it year after year. And sometimes you feel like, is it doing anything? Like, is it going anywhere? But then when you have a victory like that, you're like, it is worth it. It's worth it. So yeah, I applaud every company that has, like obviously taking our cue and taking the public cue, because I mean, when people find out the cruelty behind these products, they are affected and they don't want to be buying that, like it changes people's perception. And for sure, it's your responsibility as a corporation making money to be responsible about the products you put out there and to be attentive.
Yeah, not all of them agree with that, but yes, it is.
I know.
When they don't agree, we show up at their shareholder meetings.
Yeah. So, pressure campaigns work. They do. So we have to keep at it.
Now? It must be cold in Montreal right now.
Oh, it's gotten a little bit better, but it's been cold, and I'm not a fan of cold.
I grew up in Detroit, and I used to do a lot of protests in Montreal when I was living in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
So there's a department store chain who used to sell for, I can't remember what they're called, but anyway, a department store in Montreal.
Ogilvy, maybe?
No.
No, the Bay.
The Bay.
The Hudson Bay, yeah.
The Bay.
They're still around.
We had a funeral march in Montreal once. We had a coffin full of furs.
Oh, wow.
And we marched them to the Bay, and then they happened to be lit on fire. in
Wow,
front of
that got people's attention, I'm sure.
we did a few, yeah, Montreal. I would do a Detroit, London, Toronto, Ontario, Montreal, Quebec
Wow.
tour that I would do that tour all the time.
Wow. And this was like how far back, I guess? You were
90,
still an intern at PETA?
97, 96 and 90.
Okay.
We did a lot.
Wow. That's awesome.
I had people in diapers in Quebec City once.
In diapers?
So
What was that campaign about?
It was Baby New Year. We actually did a protest on New Year's Day saying Baby New Year and Father Time. And it was cold.
Oh,
It was
wow.
super cold. It was really like makes you cry cold. And I had someone wearing a diaper and a bonnet.
Oh my Lord. I know, like when I saw there was a big PETA campaign protest for fur, and I think in London, and you had like obviously beautiful ladies wearing nothing, almost
Little,
nothing. Yeah, and I'm like, wow, I respect, one for having the balls to do this, and the other one for freezing your butt off for
we
animals.
We used to do one kind of a cheat. And we did it, one of the coldest time we ever did it was in Toronto. And we had these people in cardboard coffins,
Wow.
naked, painted gray, like they were dead, with fresh flowers on them. It's a striking visual that I think is really great, but the wind chill was in the negatives. But what people didn't realize on that demo, we don't tell people because we want them to feel sorry, but so you put this cardboard coffin and you put a sheet down underneath it. But then we would put hand warmers that they get hot when you open them. So we would put them underneath. So people would say toasty warm underneath, and then with the cardboard coffin, you wouldn't get much wind. So people would actually be okay. And I remember the police coming up to me in Toronto and being like, you really got to stop this. These people are going to get injured.
Yeah, they're going to get sick.
Yeah.
Oh, you have your little tricks, I want to touch upon it very briefly because I know that we're pressed for time at this point. In terms, because on my podcast, I had the privilege of interviewing a native Chinese animal rights activist. And, she was telling me, how it is, the environment, it's a very tough place to do, you can't really you don't have freedom of speech. We take that for granted here in the West, but, over there, you just simply don't. And so from your time working in China, what have you observed? What are the challenges that these animal rights activists face? I mean, they can't be that vocal about it, or are you seeing more and more people taking risk? And
for sure, we see more and more people. The last 2 years have been difficult. They have
the
become
pandemic.
Well, not the pandemic actually, just the tightening of regulations. I mean, I think it's best to look at celebrities and how celebrities have been treated, and they have really just been shutting them down, and the celebrity fan clubs had to be closed because they don't like celebrities having the power and influence over people.
Right.
So the whole effort in the last couple of years for the government to sort of shut down the speech a bit.
Yes.
There was a time for a very long time when media was pretty free to run things. It's been curtailed recently, but part of it is you just need to know how the game is played, and there are certain rules, like you don't target a company, but if you document footage of an industry, you can show it. It's allowed. But
you just can't name the company.
Name the companies. You can't hurt a business, but you can hurt an industry.
Yeah.
So our circus footage could be shown on television, and it was in China, but we didn't name circuses. And it's a lot of that. There are certain things, you can talk about veganism if it's a positive thing, but you can't say don't eat meat. And I know there was another charity who got brought.
Yeah, because that's hurting the industry and the money.
Don't eat meat. You say go vegan, eat these things.
Positive.
So that's a lot of what, here's cruelty-free products. Here's, you can say don't wear fur because there's not, I guess they just don't care as much. Or you can talk about the cruelties in the fur industry. Targeting fur, though, is harder than targeting veganism in mainland China.
Oh, really?
So because they like the idea, and even the government likes the idea. They see the environmental impact of mock meat is better than factory farming.
Right.
So yeah, so you have to know, and you have to rely on social media. You have to be able to get all of you can't have things that are wrong. And then there's a whole foreign versus local again, even not on just that, but just in general. Like right now, Hong Kong, I mean, anything coming from Hong Kong is considered tainted because of the whole democracy protests.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work where we work with different government departments in the country to have displays or whatever, and a lot of them are having, they were shut down because of the pandemic. We can't get in. But just as the pandemic was happening, they were becoming difficult because the government doesn't want the local Chinese governments don't want to be seen as working with anyone from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
So we're Hong Kong based. The only thing, I think now it's worse to be from Hong Kong than to be from America. So
wow,
wow,
that says a lot. That's a big statement.
So you just have to know, and you have to wait it out, and it's difficult. Don't get me wrong. It's not.
It's a bit like walking on eggshells. It is.
It's easier, somewhat easier if you're local, but then not. But then they can come after you as well.
Right.
So, but there are some people doing great work on the circus industry, really putting it to town. There's some great stuff on social media.
Right.
That everything that PETA does, you can find on someone's social media somewhere, and other great groups who do.
Yeah. I would ask you.
The other interesting thing is that China likes it when you criticize other countries. So
when
we do
a
further investigation from Russia, they love to talk about how bad Russia is.
Oh, really? Okay.
So that's a way to educate. It's a way to talk about the fur industry without making it local.
Yeah. Okay. So point at a problem, but from another country.
Look at this terrible leather industry in America.
Yeah. There you go. I'm sure they love that one.
Right.
Of all the countries that you've worked in and that you've done investigations in and Asia Pacific, what one country would you say is like really ripe for change, and the people are so open to veganism, to animal rights, and is there one in particular that's much more hopeful than?
Well, I mean, the most sympathetic ones are Taiwan and Singapore, as far as regions go, and Hong Kong. Those three have the most sympathetic regions. The Philippines, we're there because I feel like as a community, and we've had a lot of front page celebrity things that we've done, and the Philippines has a background of questioning authority. It comes from the Marcos days, and I feel, I feel like there's a lot of potential, a lot of young people who have been brought up to question things, and I see
which is great.
I see a lot of hope in that.
Yeah.
And then I look at, I feel like Japan is so third biggest economic country. Yeah. And I feel like it's so under focused, and they consume so much.
Yeah.
And yet we are not educating there like we should be. I mean, we're spending more time in smaller European countries who don't have the same economic impact that Japan. So I recently was talking to some of the staff, and I was telling them that I think 2022 is the year of Japan for us. I think that's where we're going, and just part of it is we found some great people, and so I think we will. I'm hoping we will explode there. We're just about to get our first 1 million viewed video.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So there is good Good.
So can we say that that's one of the main projects you're going to be working on as PETA Asia is going to be tackling Japan?
Japan is going to be is going from strength to strength over the next year. I would like to hope that we've got stuff in Thailand and an Arabic page going. I think the Middle East is so missed by the animal rights movement. Part of it is I think that the West doesn't understand it enough, and maybe on some levels is just too scared to look into it.
Yeah.
And so, I remember I did this live export protest in Kuwait. There was me and a woman with me. We had pictures of life-size cutouts of sheep up, and it was outside the Australian embassy. And there was a woman with me, and another woman walked up to her and said, "Excuse me," and I was like, "Oh, here we go." And she said, "You don't have to wear that headscarf here."
Oh, wow.
Wasn't like, why are you protesting? Stop.
No,
protesting.
like you don't have to do that.
Like, and it's cool. I mean, Kuwait is, and so I think that a lot of, because the Middle East, just like Asia, isn't just one place. It's, there's Jordan is very different from Saudi, which is very different from Lebanon, and but yet there's this ability to there's so little in Arabic for the community, and I think that's a real detriment to our movement. And I really hope, my hopeful is that by the end of the year, we will have someone who can really be making Arabic videos and posts. And
that's great.
But that was also my hope last year. So.
Well, obviously the pandemic must have affected your work, to like everyone.
and it made social media even that much more important because people weren't, and we couldn't go up there. And, so those are the hopes. Vietnam is doing great, and our English was doing good, and traditional Chinese and simple Chinese. I encourage anyone, if you know anyone who knows Chinese or Vietnamese or Japanese, to follow us, because there's a lot of good content there.
Oh wow! Okay.
And then we'll just sort of see where we go. I think Thailand is open to so many things as well, and again, there's so little there for them.
Yeah. Well, a lot of work on your plate. You're not short on challenges, and
that is the good thing about this job, is and there's a reality to that. I mean, I wish we have 20 people working in Asia, but 20, we have 2 in Japan, and I feel like that's a luxury right now. But the reality is we should have 20 just in Japan.
Yeah, no,
we have 200 just in Japan. So
it's growing, like the team and, the advocates, the celebrities that, speak out and.
So.
Well, I think that's just wonderful. I applaud you for everything that you're doing. I think, we touched upon it a little bit, but I'm a little bit curious for you personally, seeing all this, footage of animal cruelty, very, very brutal scenes of violence against, the most innocent beings. How has it impacted you? Or do you feel like sometimes it's overwhelming and, it affects you in a very, negative way?
Yeah, it doesn't. I think there are 2 kinds of activists. Those people who get fired up by victories, and those that get fired up by problems or
to solve,
the bad. There's some people are excited by the good, and some are excited by the bad. I am excited by the bad. So when I see cruelty, I think about how we can turn that around. And so I can go into a slaughterhouse and see the good and bad. I can watch these horrific videos, and some, I'm not totally heartless. I think maybe I joke with one of our investigations manager, because sometimes he'll send me footage and be like, "This isn't anything," and I was like, I just watched some animal for 10 minutes with a gaping cut.
Oh my God.
You need some sensitivity training.
Yeah. I think you become, so used to it, you become a little bit.
That is what we have to watch out. And luckily it's a big organization, and other people can say, no, this is bad. But but for me, from a lot of the people on our team, that we aren't we don't get saddened by it because we know, and that's the privilege of the job that we have, is that we know that our job gets us to take that footage and educate others. We get to use that, and there's a power to that. There's you've got the power to make change when you document these terrible things.
I guess that's right. Like, I think you get fueled and motivated and driven by, you know, the potential that this could have, you know, in affecting change and, you know, making.
It's about the power to draw eyeballs and change. There was a time, and it's similar to this. It was a time when, you know, people would debate whether or not it was good to have celebrities involved in campaigns. When I worked in the U.S., we had done an investigation of this laboratory in New Jersey. And I went out there. We documented beagles being tested on, and I went out to the company with my beagle, and we had a radio station and a newspaper that came and covered it.
Oh wow!
And this was a while ago. 6 days later, I showed up with Kim Basinger, who was an A-list star at the time, and everyone was. Every national TV show was there, and
oh my God.
there. And 30 days later, those beagles were released from the lab. And so it was that ability to draw. And I felt like, you know, when my first protest, it was like I could have campaigned for a decade, and nobody cared. And nobody was listening to that radio station I did interview with. and Kim Basinger came and cried, and she's a wonderful person. And we got those beagles, and so that's the power that you, with this job, that you know that, you know, the I think the dog leather, no, one of our dog, anyways, there's a lot of when you have celebrities who then end up narrating some of your footage, and taking it to a whole nother level. So so
we need more and more celebrities to, you know.
So to answer your question, I don't lose sleep over.
No,
I lose sleep knowing we missed something. I have an investigator out right now in a time zone that doesn't work for me, so I am waking up at 4 in the morning right now to check messages from him, because I want to make sure everything is okay before things change. And so those are what I care about. That's where I lose sleep. I lose sleep knowing that something is out there and we might not get it, but if we get it and watch it, you know, then.
Well, I guess you've been at it for so long, you know, like I think there's a certain,
sad.
I mean,
it's sad, but it doesn't, I don't want to sound heartless, but I don't cry over it. I think, okay, let's strategize.
It emboldens you to do more.
Like we have a new investigation coming out, just wrapping up in Asia. And today I was just sort of, you know, I watched this cruelty, and my thought was, you know, which outlet would run this?
Yeah, you're like seeing it, you know, like the potential.
There's a reality, like, you know, most TV stations won't run graphic cruelty.
Yeah.
So, like, you've got to work it out. And anyway, but that's what we need to do. We don't need to cry and be upset over it. We need to just get to work and get it done, because it doesn't help anyone if watching that cruelty puts us in a coma or
no.
You need to know that, and that's, you know, people. I think that the one thing a lot of people, young people, don't get about working in this job is that it's a privilege. It is a privilege to get to do what I do. I get paid to like wake up and be useful to animals in the world. Like
that is
I'm not punching a clock. I'm not going, is it 5 o'clock yet? Is it 5 o'clock yet?
Yeah, I know.
I'm going, oh my God, it's 5 o'clock. I got so much more to do. That's how, but that's what a great thing. What a great.
It's a privilege, but you did work at it, you know, like you were there from the get-go.
You work at a lot of things, and I am lucky. I'm lucky on so many levels, and so I think that we are so many people who don't, and so many animals who don't have what we have, and so you have to see things in a relative way, right? You know, relativize your issues. And I have to say, I admire people like you. We need them. I myself is hypersensitive, and just seeing some of the footage across the computer screen, it's really, you know, hard. And that's why I always tell my activist friends,
it's okay to have fun, it's okay to do yoga, to do things that make you feel good, because if you're knee deep in suffering day in, day out, like it's gonna demoralize you, it's gonna affect you in a bad way, and you're not going to be productive for animals. You need to be strong, for the animals. And so I know myself, and so I know what I can't watch, and I avoid it.
And at the same time, once someone is vegan, at PETA, our in the campaign side of things, once you're vegan, we don't really care about you anymore. Because
we're done with you.
Job is done. Job is done.
Yeah, exactly.
So we want to help you and support you and have you talk to others. But the reality is the videos are only made for people who don't know. And
thank you. Because so many people are like, oh, you haven't watched Dominion? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I'm like, I was vegan like at 15. I don't need to watch Dominion.
Yeah, I have to admit I haven't watched it either.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I don't need.
I don't. I mean, they're great videos. I part of the reason I haven't watched Dominion was because one of our investigators watched it and kept messaging me every time his footage was used, because they used some PETA footage in it. Every time, and so
you're like, I don't need to see it at this point.
I mean, I know that it's great. And the people who put it together are fantastic people.
Yeah.
So, it's just that I have a lot of work to do. So I'm not going to spend 2 hours watching.
No.
That I don't.
That's something you're already aware of. Exactly. Yeah. And so I guess one of my last questions for you is really, because my viewers at the podcast are mostly people here in the West, in the United States and Canada and the UK and Europe. And often I always wonder, like, how can we from over here help get the most impact for animals in Asia, in a place like Asia that's 7,000, 8,000 miles away? Would you say, like, obviously following your campaigns, advocating for animals, petitions? I mean, do petitions do anything from foreigners in a country like China? For sure, I don't think so, but no.
No. So I mean, I would follow our social medias.
Yeah.
Take the action alerts that are there, because action alerts do work on some people, especially corporations.
Yes.
I would support locals. I mean, donate to PETA Asia and donate to other Asian-based charities. If it's not just PETA that you want, but I mean, I have to admit, I love PETA. I think that we so strategic in what we do, and we do so many things without our name on it.
Yeah.
Make sure that we're doing what's best for animals and not what is going to make us money or bring attention to us.
Yeah.
There's so many things that people don't know about. People don't know about the level of corporate negotiation and scientists that we have working with corporations to simply change things, change tests that are being done. It's anyways, could go on from there. So you just, and then at the same time, and people have to realize that it's not just Asia, that they need to look at what's around them.
Yeah.
That Asia also affects the United States or Canada, or they also affect the West, affects Asia. So when you are promoting what's happening around you, which may be easier, that there is a trickle down effect. The idea that vegan products, part of the reason that they're hip in China now is because they're hip in the West.
Yeah, no, that's
protests, when I was saying, protests in the West can get picked up in Chinese outlets.
Yes.
And so, it may be that trying to educate on veganism in China doesn't work as well as something being picked up from the West and being taken over.
Yes. Okay.
That's.
I think that those are good, solid suggestions.
And yeah, don't get bogged down in the what you can't. Just get focused on what you can.
Yeah.
Oh,
I love that.
Can do and what there's a lot out there that we can do.
Exactly.
In our individual lives, and then how we can help others.
Wonderful. Last question is, do you have any guest suggestions for the podcast, and why?
Good question.
And like I mentioned at the
Terrible with-
beginning.
I sort of don't hang out in these kinds of circles. I like almost shun them. But there is the guy who is it called Green Monday? Green Common. The guy who started OmniPork.
Oh,
Our business. It was our business of the year in 2019.
wow.
They are the most influential mock meat company in Asia now.
Wow.
They're in Thailand, and they're just entering the North American market. I
Wow.
think if you want to talk about Asia and economics, I'm not sure that's your thing, but I think he would be fascinating.
Wow.
I don't know him personally. I know a lot of my staff have worked with him. I just never have gotten to meet him. Who else would I talk to? There is a woman who does a lot of circuses, whose name I can get for you, in China, who I think is pretty. I mean, she is on national television with our footage talking about circuses, and I think she's.
Oh, wow. Is she a
right.
celebrity, or she's more
No,
like an activist? Wow, that would be great.
Trying to think of.
Well, you're already giving me more than the average.
There's the Taiwan SPCA.
Oh, yeah.
The Taiwan SPCA is a bit different than most SPCAs. It's run by two twin sisters. They used to be MTV VJs and MTV Taiwan back in the day. They're really fantastic.
Fabulous.
I work with them a lot, and they would know both Taiwan and China. They've one of them. I mean, because they were celebs themselves a bit. They did work in mainland, so they know it, and they're good.
They're well connected.
They're animal rights. They're not your typical. They're not a typical shelter.
Wow.
And
well, I think
there you go. Those three would be my pick. I'm gonna then think of people later and be like, oh, that one.
Oh, you can always message me. You can always do it. But I mean, that's amazing.
There's a lot of amazing things happening in China.
Yeah.
It's hard because one of the things that we don't do so much is, it's not that we wouldn't work with others, it's just that we bring controversial baggage that people don't want to work with us. And so, I keep us really focused on what we have to do.
Yeah.
And we don't go to conferences very much, sometimes, but don't really go to conferences just because we got work to do. So I don't tend to know,
Well, you just gave me 3 fabulous recommendations.
I know Jill was already on, and Jill is great, but I haven't seen Jill in.
Oh, Jill Robinson. Yeah. I had her twice.
I've seen her like 4 or 5 years now, maybe 5 years, and I saw her at another Stella McCartney event, where there was this actress Sun Lee who does a lot for us that was there, and it was just great to see this celeb who was talking. Anyways, there's an actress named Sun Lee. Her English isn't good enough for the podcast, but she was our first celeb in China. She is amazing. She came and I told her, and she came and sat down with us for a long time, and she was like the guest of honor at this Stella McCartney event.
Wow.
She was way bigger than Stella McCartney.
Can I ask you to repeat her name? What's
Sun Lee? Sun Lee. S-U-N, but it's not pronounced Sun, it's pronounced Sun. Sun Lee, L-I.
L-I, yeah, Lee. Oh, wow. Okay, definitely gonna look around.
Really spoke out. She was the first celebrity to speak out against fur.
Yeah.
And I told her, and so she came and sat down like for a good chunk of the event, with just pulled up a chair and sat with my assistant. They shared the chair.
Wow.
And I told her then that I thought she was the most impactful person against fur in the whole world. And I still think that, because she was the first person in China to speak out against fur, this first celebrity. And it sort of basically sent a message to every other celebrity to stay away from it.
Yeah.
And that was a monumental change.
Wow.
So I did. I still think she had the most impact of any person ever in the fur industry.
Wow, phenomenal. Well,
Yeah,
thank you
yeah,
so much, Jason. You've been amazing. Like we've gone an hour over our time limit, but
yeah,
I really appreciate it.
yeah, I got
And so obviously for viewers at home, do check out the links. I'm going to post the links in the description box below. Go and support PETA, share it with your friends in Asia so that we have more momentum going on these campaigns. And, you know, just overall, thank you to you, Jason, for your dedication towards animals and making this world a better place for all living beings. And I really, you know, think you're amazing. And, you know, we owe you a lot. And PETA Asia is doing amazing work. And we're going to continue to follow your campaigns and your projects and, you know, keep up to date.
Thank you. It is a group effort.
Yes, exactly. You know, I think, you know, PETA, Ingrid Newkirk is someone that, you know, is like an icon to me. She's done so much. She's paved the way for animal rights. And I just, you know, have so much admiration and respect for anyone who dedicates their lives towards improving other people's lives. So,
It's
you know,
pretty amazing.
oh yeah, you're you know, in a good position, and you know, I think you're gonna just continue to impress us and do more amazing work.
We will try.
And yeah, no, I'm sure you won't disappoint us. Thank you,
Okay.
Jason. Take
Thank you very
care.
much. Take care.
All
Cheers.
right, bye-bye.